April 1945. Nazi Germany was crumbling. Allied forces were closing in. And when British soldiers pushed through the gates of Bergen-Belsen concentration camp, hardened combat veterans who had seen years of war, they broke down and wept. Not from battle, from what they found inside. Over 13,000 unburied corpses rotting in the open air. 60,000 survivors, skeletal, hollow, dying, packed into barracks designed for a fraction of that number. A stench so overwhelming that soldiers vomited on the spot. And standing among it all, in uniform with whips in their hands, were women. This is their story, who they were, what they did, and how justice finally came for them. When the Nazis first built their concentration camp network, it was almost entirely male-operated. The SS controlled everything, the violence, the selections, and the daily brutality. But the war changed the equation. As Germany expanded its camps across occupied Europe, men were pulled to the front lines. The system was running out of staff, so the Nazi leadership made a decision that history would not forget. They recruited women. Between 1939 and 1945, roughly 3,700 women were trained and deployed as concentration camp guards. Their official title was Aufseherinnen, female overseers. They weren't fanatics. They were farmhands, shop clerks, factory workers, and office assistants. Most had no political background whatsoever. What drew them in was simple: a steady salary, guaranteed housing, food rations, and authority. Things increasingly hard to find in wartime Germany. Training happened at Ravensbrück camp and lasted only a few weeks. The central lesson was straightforward and devastating. Prisoners are not people. They are enemies of the state. Treat them accordingly. That single ideological shift unlocked something terrifying in many of these women. Once they stopped seeing their victims as human, ordinary people became capable of unspeakable things. Bergen-Belsen was never designed as an extermination camp. No gas chambers, no organized killing program. It began in 1940 as a prisoner of war facility in Lower Saxony, later becoming a holding camp for Jewish prisoners. Then 1945 arrived, and the camp was swallowed alive. As Allied forces swept eastward, the Nazis evacuated their eastern camps and forced prisoners on brutal death marches westward. Tens of thousands of shattered survivors poured into Bergen-Belsen. A camp built for a few thousand was suddenly holding over 60,000 people. The infrastructure collapsed completely. No food supply, no sanitation, no medicine, contaminated water. Barracks so overcrowded that prisoners slept on top of each other. Then typhus hit. The disease burned through the population like fire through dry grass. In just a few months, approximately 35,000 people died from typhus alone. Dysentery, tuberculosis, and starvation claimed thousands more. Bodies piled up faster than the living, too weak to stand, could move them. And through all of it, the female guards offered nothing resembling mercy. They forced dying prisoners to stand for hours during roll calls in freezing temperatures. They withheld food. They beat inmates with whips, batons, and fists for the smallest infractions, moving too slowly, failing to maintain posture, making eye contact at the wrong moment. Some kept trained attack dogs deployed not for protection, but as deliberate weapons against prisoners already on the ground. None of it was hidden. The violence happened openly, in plain sight. These women believed they were untouchable, that the Nazi system was permanent, that no one would ever hold them accountable. They were catastrophically wrong. When British soldiers liberated Bergen-Belsen on April 15, 1945, they arrested every SS member still present, including 45 women. Just 5 months later, and on September 17, 1945, the Bergen-Belsen war crimes trial opened in Lüneburg, Germany. 45 defendants stood in the dock, men and women charged with crimes against humanity. What followed shocked the world. Survivor after survivor took the stand. 240 witnesses testified over 2 months. They named names. They described specific beatings. They recalled exact faces, exact moments, exact acts of cruelty with razor-sharp precision. The accused tried various defenses, following orders, lack of knowledge, deliberate silence. None of it held against the weight of evidence. 3 women became the defining faces of the trial's most devastating accusations. Irma Grese, 22 years old, blonde, chillingly composed. The press called her the beautiful beast. She had joined the SS at 19, trained at Ravensbrück, Unusha risen to senior warden at Auschwitz, and arrived at Bergen-Belsen carrying the same cold brutality with her. Survivors testified she beat women for whispering, for limping, for daring to smile. She participated in selections at Auschwitz, pointing left or right, calmly deciding who died immediately and who faced the slower death of forced labor. Throughout the trial, she showed nothing resembling remorse. She sat straight, met the judge's eyes, nodded slightly when her death sentence was read. Elisabeth Volkenrath, a senior SS supervisor who held direct authority over Bergen-Belsen's female compound during its deadliest months. Witness after witness placed her at the center of selection processes, managing the camp's catastrophic collapse with indifference and at times open encouragement of violence. Sentenced to death, Juana Bormann feared across multiple camps for one signature act of terror. Her weapon of choice was her trained dog, which she deployed against defenseless prisoners on command. Some victims were left with severe wounds, some didn't survive. During the trial, she was observed smiling at moments during testimony. The court noted it carefully. Her sentence was the same as the others: death. In total, 11 people were condemned, 8 men and 3 women. It was the first time a military court formally established that women were not passive bystanders in the Holocaust. They had been active participants, and they would face identical consequences. Hameln Prison, December 13, 1945. British executioner Albert Pierrepoint arrived that morning. A man of grim expertise who had carried out hundreds of executions and would carry out hundreds more. He brought no ceremony, only precision. Irma Grese went first. She walked to the gallows in her prison uniform. She did not speak, she did not plead, she did not break. Pierrepoint later recalled, she faced her death with the same stillness she had shown throughout the trial. The lever dropped. She was 22 years old. Elisabeth Volkenrath followed. No final words, no emotion. She climbed the scaffold and met her sentence. Juana Bormann came third. The smirks from the courtroom were gone. She died in silence, as the others had. By the time the morning ended, 10 executions had been carried out. 3 women, 7 men, each brought in separately. Each dropped through the trap door. It was over within an hour. The people who once held absolute power over thousands of human lives had none left at all. But justice at Hameln was only part of the story, and the rest is far less satisfying. Of approximately 3,700 female guards, fewer than 500 were ever brought before any court. That means over 85% faced 0 legal consequences for their role in the Holocaust. When Germany collapsed in May 1945, hundreds of female guards simply vanished. They stripped off their uniforms and melted into the chaos of millions of displaced civilians crossing a shattered continent. False identities, rural villages, new names, new lives. Germany was in ruins, records were destroyed, and it was devastatingly easy to disappear. Some who were convicted received sentences that felt deeply inadequate. Hildegard Leckert are extensively documented for her violence at Bergen-Belsen and Majdanek, received 15 years and was released early in the 1950s. Others served partial sentences and quietly returned to civilian life, never speaking publicly about what they had done. The survivors carried those memories alone. Every testimony given, every memoir written, every interview conducted was an act of resistance against forgetting. The Bergen-Belsen Trial established something the world needed to hear plainly. Evil has no gender requirement. The capacity for sustained, deliberate cruelty does not belong to one type of person. These were not monsters from another world. They were ordinary women from ordinary towns who made choices, daily, repeated, often enthusiastic choices to participate in one of history's worst atrocities. When the photographs from Bergen-Belsen circulated globally after liberation, mass graves, skeletal survivors, fields of the dead, for millions of people, it was the first undeniable proof of what the Nazi regime had truly built. And the survivors never let the world forget it. The women who walked to the gallows at Hameln had believed with complete certainty that they would never face consequences. They were wrong, and that matters not because justice erased the suffering, nothing could, but because it proved that accountability has no exemptions. No rank, no gender, no order from above places anyone beyond its reach. Bergen-Belsen stands today as a memorial. The barracks are gone, but the names of the dead are preserved. The testimonies survive, the record endures. Some things must never be allowed to fade.